The container ship stops moving. Not dramatically, just stops. 11,000 containers stacked 7 stories high, frozen 40 miles off the port of Los Angeles. Behind it, 63 more ships form a line stretching to the horizon. They're not unloading. They're not turning around. They're just waiting for an order that isn't coming. This is a simulation, but the trade numbers are real. The supply chain dependencies are documented. The timeline is based on actual inventory data from industry reports and federal logistics studies, your phone, your medication, the components inside the device you're watching this on right now. There's a 40% chance critical parts came from China, and they just stopped coming. Most people think the first impact would be electronics, iPhones, PlayStations, laptops. They're wrong. Those have buffer inventory. The first thing that breaks is something most people have never heard of, a specific component that sits inside machines you use every single day but never see. By day 23 of this scenario, a shortage emerges that affects 67% of American households directly. It's not what stops working that creates the crisis. It's what people do when they realize what's about to stop working. In a distribution center in Nebraska, a logistics coordinator sees a number on her screen that doesn't make sense yet. In 48 hours, it will make perfect sense, and she'll wish it didn't. This is how it begins. Here's the actual mechanism. The United States imports $427 billion worth of goods from China annually. That's $1.17 billion every single day. The breakdown matters. 26% electronics and machinery, 19% furniture and household goods, 14% textiles and clothing, 12% medical devices and pharmaceuticals, 9% automotive parts, and 20% everything else from toys to industrial chemicals. When imports stop, there's no dramatic moment, no announcement. In this simulation, a combination of port labor disputes and diplomatic breakdowns creates a de facto embargo. Ships stop sailing, planes stop flying. The last cargo flight from Shanghai lands in Memphis at 6:47 a.m. on what becomes day 0. After that, nothing. The first 72 hours are deceptively calm. There's what's called pipeline inventory. Goods already in transit, already in customs, already in warehouses. Best Buy still has TVs. Target still has clothing. Pharmacies still have medications. The shelves look normal because they're still being stocked from inventory that arrived last week. But behind those shelves, procurement teams are running calculations that turn into quiet panic. A purchasing manager at a major retail chain pulls up their reorder system. Normally, the lead time from order to delivery for goods from China is 28-35 days. That includes manufacturing, shipping, customs clearance. The system is designed around that rhythm. She looks at current inventory levels for major product categories. Then she looks at the reorder queue. There are 247 purchase orders in various stages with Chinese suppliers, collectively worth $340 million. As of this morning, none of them will be fulfilled on schedule. The system doesn't have a button for entire country stops shipping. She starts drafting an email to her vice president. She deletes it 3 times before sending. Here's what most people miss. It's not just finished products, it's components. A car assembled in Detroit contains about 35,000 parts. Roughly 4,000 of those parts either come directly from China or contain subcomponents from China. Semiconductors, wiring harnesses, sensors, display screens, specialized plastics. American auto manufacturers operate on sophisticated just-in-time systems. They don't stockpile months of inventory. They keep 10-14 days of parts on hand, sometimes less. When the supply chain works perfectly, this is brilliant efficiency. When it stops, it's a countdown timer. By day 4, the first automotive assembly line pauses. Not officially stops, just pauses. A specific sensor needed for backup cameras hasn't arrived. The plant in Tennessee has 300 vehicles in various stages of completion. They can finish 287 of them with current parts. The remaining 13 sit incomplete on the line. Engineers start looking for alternative suppliers. The answer comes back, possible, but 6 to 8 weeks to certify and scale up production. Now here's what surprises most people. The first critical shortage isn't cars or electronics. Consumer goods have more buffer than you'd think. Retailers stock up before holidays. Distributors maintain reserves. There's flex in that system. The first critical shortage is pharmaceutical ingredients. Between 80 to 90% of active pharmaceutical ingredients used in American medications are manufactured overseas. China produces approximately 40% of that total. Antibiotics, blood pressure medications, diabetes drugs, antidepressants. The pills are often bottled in the US, but the chemical compounds inside them, they come from factories in Zhejiang and Jiangsu provinces. By day 6, pharmaceutical companies send quiet notifications to the FDA. Current API inventory levels, 15 out of 45 days depending on the medication. No new shipments incoming. Domestic production capacity exists for some compounds, but not all, and scaling up takes months, not weeks. The FDA doesn't issue public warnings yet. They activate something called the Drug Shortage Management System. It's designed for isolated shortages of specific medications. It's never been tested for a multi-drug supply disruption from a single geographic source. A pharmacist in Ohio gets an automated notification from her wholesaler. 7 medications are moving to allocation status. That's industry language for rationing. She can order them, but she'll receive 60% of her normal quantity. The list includes a common blood pressure medication, 2 antibiotics, and a diabetes drug. She's never seen multiple medications go into allocation simultaneously. She screenshots the notification and sends it to 3 pharmacist friends in other states. They all report the same thing. The mechanism is clear. The timeline is accelerating. And what's not clear yet is how the public will react when they start connecting the dots. They're about to start connecting the dots. Day 7. The narrative is still controlled. News coverage focuses on trade negotiations, diplomatic efforts, potential resolutions. Business reporters interview economists who explain that most large companies maintain inventory buffers precisely for disruptions like this. The message is temporary, manageable, being addressed. But in procurement departments across every major retailer, the atmosphere is different. A buyer for a large pharmacy chain runs a report showing fill rates from their main distributor. Last week, 98.7% of orders filled completely. This week, 94.2%. The missing 4.5% is concentrated in specific categories: over-the-counter medications, vitamins, medical supplies. She flags it to her director. The response: monitor closely, prepare contingency communications, do not create alarm. Meanwhile, the television manufacturer makes a decision that ripples. They announce some temporary production adjustments at their facility in South Carolina. The plant assembles TVs, but 67% of components come from China. Current inventory: 9 days at normal production rate. They don't shut down completely. They cut production to 40% and extend the component supply to 22 days. 340 workers get reduced hours. They're not laid off, but their paychecks just dropped by 60%. One of those workers does math in his truck before driving home. Reduced income, $608 less per month. Mortgage, $340. Car payment, $290. Groceries, $600. Utilities, $180. The math doesn't work. He applies for unemployment partial benefits. He's not alone. Within 48 hours, 8,000 workers across manufacturing sectors file similar claims. A supply chain analyst at a Fortune 500 retailer runs a simulation nobody asked him to run. He models what happens to shelf inventory if the import pause lasts 30, 60, or 90 days. The 30-day scenario shows manageable gaps in non-essential categories. The 60-day scenario shows significant shortages across multiple departments. The 90-day scenario shows something he doesn't want to type into the report: a 40-60% reduction in total merchandise availability across stores. He sends the analysis to his VP with a note: sharing for awareness. Hope this remains theoretical. The reply comes in 7 minutes. Schedule a call with category leads this afternoon. Day 9. The first visible consumer impact appears, and it's not where anyone expected. A nationwide retailer of craft and hobby supplies runs out of a specific type of adhesive used by millions of hobbyists. It seems trivial. It's not a medication, not food, not essential. But it's a signal. Someone posts about it on Reddit, then on Facebook, then on Twitter. Can't find E6000 glue anywhere. Is this related to the China thing? The comments fill with similar observations. Different products, same pattern. A specific brand of yarn, certain art supplies, particular electronics accessories. Each individually small. Collectively, they form a mosaic. People start noticing. Once they notice, they start looking. Once they start looking, they see the pattern everywhere. A parent in Michigan goes to 3 different stores looking for a specific baby formula brand. Not out of stock everywhere, but inconsistent. One store has it, 2 don't. The store that has it limits purchases to 2 containers. There's no sign explaining why. She doesn't panic. She just buys the limit and makes a mental note to check back in a few days. Rational behavior. The problem is when 40,000 other parents in similar situations make the same mental note and implement the same strategy. Day 11. A TikTok goes viral. 4.3 million views in 18 hours. A guy films himself in a Best Buy. He's not angry. He's not panicking. He's just walking through the store narrating empty spaces. Gaming laptop section. Normally 30 models, now 11. Phone accessories picked over. Headphones, major gaps. The video isn't alarmist, it's observational. That makes it more credible. The comments section becomes a real-time crowdsourced shortage map. People from 37 states posting what they're seeing in their local stores. The pattern is clear. Electronics, small appliances, anything with sophisticated components, stock levels between 40-70% of normal. A Best Buy district manager sees the video. She can't contradict it because it's accurate. She sends guidance to store managers. If customers ask about stock levels, explain supply chain adjustments, emphasize items are still available, avoid the word shortage. But you can't policy memo away empty shelf space. Day 12. Social media does what it does. A hashtag trends. Shouting China shortage. It's not coordinated, it's emergent. People posting photos of empty shelves, out-of-stock notifications, price increases. News outlets pick up the trend, but the coverage is still measured. Supply chain pressures. Create spotty availability for some consumer goods. The framing is careful. Temporary, isolated, manageable. Except in one category where it's becoming none of those things. A hospital network in California sends an internal memo that leaks within 3 hours. Effective immediately, implement conservation protocols for IV solutions, surgical supplies, and specific medication categories. Prioritize critical and emergency use. A nurse screenshots it, posts it to a closed Facebook group for healthcare workers. The group has 12,000 members nationally. Within 2 hours, 83 nurses from hospitals in 19 states post similar internal communications. The language varies. The instruction is the same. Conserve supplies. Publicly, hospital spokespeople maintain that patient care is not affected. Technically true. They're managing, but managing means making choices that weren't being made 3 weeks ago. Choosing between equivalent medications based on which one they have more of. Postponing elective procedures by a few days to preserve supplies. A dialysis patient in Florida gets a call from her clinic. Can she move her appointment from Thursday to Tuesday? They don't explain why. She's been getting dialysis for 6 years. She knows what it means when clinics start adjusting schedules. They're trying to serve everyone before something runs out. She asks directly, "Are you running low on supplies?" The scheduler pauses. "We're managing our resources carefully to ensure all patients receive care." That's not a no. Day 14. The federal government makes its first major public intervention. The Department of Commerce announces emergency measures, expedited approval for alternative suppliers, relaxed regulations on certain imports from allied nations, financial incentives for domestic production scale-up. It's the right response. It's also confirmation that this is serious enough to require federal intervention. A pharmaceutical manufacturer in New Jersey gets a call from the FDA. Can they increase production of a common antibiotic? They can. Their current capacity is 400,000 units per month. Normal U.S. consumption is 12 million units per month. They can double production, maybe triple it with some process adjustments. So the math is simple. Their maximum possible contribution covers 10% of normal demand. It helps. It's insufficient. The production manager runs numbers. To truly scale up, they'd need to build additional manufacturing capacity. Timeline, 18 months. Cost, $40 million minimum. And that's for one medication. She tells the FDA representative the reality. We can help at the margins. We can't replace China's capacity. The representative knows she's having the same conversation with 15 other manufacturers. The aggregate answer is the same. Helpful, but insufficient. Day 16. The first confrontation happens. A Walgreens in Phoenix. A woman comes to pick up her husband's blood pressure medication. The pharmacist tells her they're out of stock, expected to be available in 7-10 days. Can she wait, or would she like to try a different location? She calls 2 other pharmacies, both out of stock of the same medication. She returns to the first pharmacy. She's not yelling, but her voice carries, "My husband needs this medication. You're telling me nowhere in Phoenix has it?" The pharmacist offers alternatives. Different medication, same therapeutic class. The woman's insurance requires prior authorization for the alternative. That takes 48, 72 hours. Another customer overhears the exchange, takes out her phone, starts recording, not confrontationally, just documenting. The video is online in 5 minutes. It's shared 140,000 times by midnight. The narrative is shifting. This isn't about delayed iPhones or missing craft supplies anymore. Day 18. 3 separate dynamics are converging. First, rational individual behavior creating collective problems. A family in Oregon hears about medication shortages. They're not personally affected yet, but they refill prescriptions early, just in case. Completely rational. When 5 million families do the same thing simultaneously, it accelerates the shortage it was trying to avoid. Second, business adaptations that work individually but fail collectively. Retailers are pivoting to alternative suppliers where possible. But everyone is calling the same alternative suppliers at the same time. A Vietnamese manufacturer that normally produces 100,000 units of a product monthly gets inquiries totaling 800,000 units. They can scale up, but not 8x and not overnight. Third, the psychological shift from temporary inconvenience to persistent uncertainty. When something is framed as a 2-week disruption, people tolerate it. When it extends past 3 weeks with no clear end date, behavior changes. A college student in Texas goes to Target to buy basic dorm supplies. She's making a list when she overhears 2 other shoppers comparing notes on what's still available. She starts paying attention to gaps she wouldn't have noticed otherwise. The bedding section looks thin, not empty but picked over. Phone chargers, mostly iPhone, very few USB-C. Bluetooth speakers, 5 models instead of the usual 15. She doesn't need any of those things today, but she starts thinking about what she might need in 2 months. She adds items to her cart that she wouldn't normally buy yet. Again, rational behavior. Again, when multiplied across millions of people, it becomes part of the problem. Day 21. Something breaks that even contingency plans didn't fully account for. Not a single catastrophic failure. A cascade of small dependencies. A medical device used in cardiac catheterization procedures requires a specialized sensor. The sensor has 6 components. 5 are sourced domestically or from European suppliers. One component, a specific semiconductor chip, comes exclusively from China. The device manufacturer has 40 days of chip inventory remaining. They start engineering an alternative design using a different chip. That process takes 60, 90 days, then requires FDA approval, then manufacturing scale up. They send notifications to hospitals. The device will be available in limited quantities until further notice. Hospitals start rationing cardiac catheterizations. Emergency cases proceed normally. Scheduled procedures get prioritized by urgency. A patient in Atlanta scheduled for a non-emergency procedure gets a call. Can we move your procedure out 3 weeks? He asks why. The nurse gives a vague answer about scheduling optimization. He asks directly if it's supply related. Pause. We're managing our resources to ensure patients with urgent needs are served first. He's a 58-year-old accountant with moderate heart disease. Not dying, not emergency level, but not something you want to delay indefinitely. He agrees to reschedule. Then he calls his brother, who calls a friend, who posts about it on Facebook. The story spreads because it's not about missing iPhones. It's about medical procedures being delayed. Day 23. Here's the shortage nobody saw coming. Washing machines stopped being available, not completely, but a specific category. Affordable front-load washers in the $600, $900 range, the segment that represents 60% of washing machine sales in America. Nearly all of them use control boards, motors, and drum assemblies manufactured in China. A national appliance retailer runs completely out of inventory in that category. They have washing machines available, high-end models at 1/400 plows, and basic top loaders. But the middle market sweet spot, gone. A family in Pennsylvania has their washing machine break. Not die dramatically, just stops draining properly. The repair estimate, $340. They decide to replace it instead. They go to 3 stores. The conversation is identical at each one. We have these models available, pointing to the expensive ones, or you can order and wait 6 to 8 weeks for restock. They can't wait 2 months without a washing machine. They can't afford a $100 to $400 machine. They buy a basic $450 top loader that's less efficient and less durable. It's a downgrade, but it's available. Multiply that scenario across millions of households. The aggregate effect is significant. Consumers are spending money on inferior products or postponing purchases entirely. Either way, the economy is adjusting downward. An appliance store manager in Ohio sees traffic increase but sales decrease. People are coming in. They're looking. But when they see what's available at what prices, they're leaving. His conversion rate drops from 38% to 19% in 1 week. This is what economic contraction looks like at ground level. Not everything breaks. A small electronics retailer in Colorado makes a decision that becomes a survival strategy. They stop competing on price for scarce items. Instead, they compete on availability. They source products from smaller distributors, sometimes paying 20-30% more. They pass that cost to customers but maintain stock. A gaming laptop that sold for $1,999 3 weeks ago now costs $1,349 at their store. People pay it because the alternative is checking 5 stores and finding nothing. The owner knows this isn't sustainable long term, but long term assumes this ends. Right now, he's optimizing for next week. A clothing manufacturer in North Carolina pivots. They normally produce 60% of their garments domestically and 40% in China. They call their domestic contractors. Can you absorb more volume? The answer, yes, but not at the same price point. Domestic labor costs 2.53x Chinese labor for garment assembly. They run the math. If they shift entirely to domestic production, their wholesale costs increase by 35 to 40%. They can't absorb that. Retailers can't absorb it. It gets passed to consumers. A t-shirt that retailed for $24.99 will now retail for $34.99. Some customers will pay it, many won't. Sales volume will drop. But the business stays operational. It's a trade-off. Jobs versus prices. They choose jobs. Within 30 days, they've created 180 new manufacturing positions in North Carolina. The workers earn $16, $19 per hour. It's not a tech salary, but it's employment. The shirts cost more, but they exist. These are the success stories, small scale, localized, inadequate to replace what's missing, but not zero. A hospital network in Boston tries something unprecedented. They partner with 3 other hospital systems to create a shared pharmaceutical purchasing cooperative. By pooling resources and coordinating with the FDA, they negotiate priority allocation of scarce medications based on patient acuity across all 4 systems. A patient who needs medication urgently at Hospital A might receive supply originally allocated to Hospital B, where the need is less immediate. It requires real-time data sharing and unprecedented cooperation between institutions that normally compete. It works. Not perfectly, but it reduces waste and ensures the sickest patients get what they need first. A logistics coordinator calls it triage economics. The term sticks. But not everyone can adapt. A small pharmaceutical wholesaler that exclusively distributed Chinese-manufactured generic medications has nothing to distribute. They maintained minimal inventory because their suppliers were reliable and cheap. That was the business model. Efficiency over resilience. The business has 47 employees. By day 30, they've furloughed 38 of them. By day 45, they'll close entirely. The owner didn't make bad decisions. He made rational decisions. In a system that worked for 15 years. Until it didn't. His employees file for unemployment. They'll find other jobs eventually. Some will, some won't. The labor market is absorbing thousands of similar disruptions simultaneously. Small businesses face different constraints. A boutique in Austin that specialized in affordable imported home goods has nothing to sell. She has rent, she has utilities, she has no inventory, and no way to get inventory that fits her price point. She tries pivoting to local artisans. She finds 7 local craftspeople making candles, soaps, decorative items, beautiful products. Priced 3 or 4x higher than what she normally sold. Her customer base came for affordable decor. They can't afford artisan pricing. Traffic drops 70%. Day 52, she closes permanently. 9 years in business. Survived the 2008 recession. Survived COVID. Couldn't survive this. Regular people make smaller adjustments that collectively reshape behavior. A family in Minnesota used to buy household items as needed. Now they buy opportunistically. When they see something they'll eventually need, cleaning supplies, toiletries, batteries, they buy extra, not hoarding, just buffering. It's rational. When multiplied across 40 million households, it changes consumption patterns. Retailers see demand shift from predictable, steady purchasing to spiky, unpredictable buying. That makes inventory management nearly impossible. A grocery store manager in Arizona notices something odd. Sales of canned goods are up 40%, even though fresh food supply is normal. People are creating home inventory buffers. The store isn't running out of food, but customers are behaving as if it might. The psychology outlasts the actual shortage. Online marketplaces see a surge in peer-to-peer resale. A person in California bought an extra air purifier during the early days of uncertainty. Doesn't need it. Lists it online. Sells it in 4 hours at a 20% markup. Not price gouging, just supply and demand finding equilibrium in informal markets. Community adaptation emerges without coordination. A neighborhood in Denver creates a tool sharing network. If your washing machine breaks and you can't get a replacement for 2 months, you can use a neighbor's machine. In exchange, you share something else, a lawnmower, power tools, whatever you have excess capacity in. It's not organized, no apps, no formal structure, just neighbors helping neighbors because the usual commercial systems are unreliable. These networks don't make headlines, but they matter. They're the social infrastructure that prevents economic disruption from becoming social breakdown. Day 60. A pattern is crystallized. The economy has reached a new equilibrium. Not collapse, not normal, something in between. Electronics are available, but selection is 40 to 50% of what it was, and prices are 20 to 30% higher. Appliances are available if you're willing to pay premium prices or wait weeks. Clothing is available, but costs more. Medications are being managed through rationing and allocation systems that work, but create anxiety. Auto production is running at 65% of normal capacity. 43,000 workers are furloughed or on reduced hours. New car prices have increased by an average of $2,800 due to scarcity. Unemployment has ticked up 1.2 percentage points. Not catastrophic, but representing about 2 million people whose jobs depended on supply chains that no longer function normally. A teenager in Florida walks through a Walmart and notices the electronics section looks sparse. He doesn't remember what it looked like before this started. To him, this is just what stores look like now. That's the moment when temporary becomes normal. Day 75. Negotiations resume. Not because anyone won, because the economic pain reached a threshold where both sides had more to lose from continued disruption than from compromise. The import pause ends with new conditions, enhanced inspections, modified trade terms, slower processing times. Trade volume returns to approximately 60% of previous levels initially. It's not victory, it's exhausted pragmatism. The first container ship from Shanghai docks in Long Beach at 7:30 a.m. on day 77. It carries 200 containers of electronics, automotive parts, household goods, medical supplies. Within 72 hours, distribution centers start pushing inventory to retailers. Shelves begin filling, not instantly, not completely, but the flow restarts. A Best Buy store in Nevada receives a shipment of gaming laptops, 15 units, the most they've had in stock in 2 months. They sell out in 36 hours. But the next shipment arrives 5 days later. The rhythm is returning. Auto manufacturers restart idled production lines, cautiously. At reduced capacity initially, but movement is better than stillness. A worker in Tennessee who was furloughed on day 22 gets a text on day 81. Report to work Monday. Regular schedule resuming. He doesn't celebrate. He just exhales for the first time in 8 weeks. Hospitals receive bulk shipments of IV solutions and surgical supplies. The rationing protocols stay in place for another 3 weeks as safety buffers rebuild. But the crisis arc is bending toward stability. Pharmacies see medications return to normal availability. A patient in Phoenix picks up her blood pressure medication without incident. She doesn't think about the fact that 2 months ago this was uncertain. That's how fast normal reasserts itself. But some things have changed permanently. Electronics manufacturers make a strategic decision. They're diversifying supply chains. China remains important, but not exclusively critical. They're investing in manufacturing partnerships in Vietnam, Mexico, India. It's more expensive, it's more complex, but the risk tolerance has fundamentally shifted. This means longer timelines, higher costs, more complicated logistics. A laptop that took 28 days from order to delivery now takes 35 to no more than 40 days. A smartphone that cost $790 now costs $879. The resilience premium is baked into pricing. Retailers maintain relationships with alternative suppliers they developed during the shortage. Imported goods return to dominance. But now there's a secondary network. Smaller, more expensive, but tested and functional. An appliance retailer keeps a domestic supplier on contract even though their products cost 25% more. They stock them in limited quantities. Most customers buy the cheaper imported option. But when supply chains hiccup, and they will, the domestic option is there. Hospitals stockpile critical supplies differently. Instead of 10 to 15-day inventory levels, they target 45-60 days for essential medications and supplies. It ties up capital. It costs money in warehousing and inventory management. But the risk calculation has permanently shifted. The economic term is resilience investment, the cost of building redundancy into systems optimized for efficiency. American consumers are paying it now, an extra $50 on electronics, an extra $90 on appliances, an extra $2.50 on clothing, individually small, collectively massive. The aggregate cost across the entire economy, roughly $85 billion annually. That's the price of what happened. But there's a cost that doesn't show up in economic models. Trust. The invisible assumption that the systems you depend on will keep functioning, that stores will stay stocked, that pharmacies will have medications, that jobs will remain stable. Some of that trust was spent during these 90 days. A pharmacist in Ohio still checks inventory levels more frequently than she used to, even though supply is normal now. The habit formed during scarcity persists in abundance. A family in Texas still keeps 3 weeks of household supplies on hand, even though stores are fully stocked. The psychology of uncertainty outlasts the uncertainty itself. A factory worker in Michigan reads news about trade policy differently now. Before, it was abstract. Now he knows exactly how many days it takes for abstract policy to become a furlough notice. The scenario ended on day 77, but the behavior it created continues. Zoom out from the 90 days. What did this simulation actually reveal? It exposed something most people understand intuitively, but rarely think about directly. Modern economies are not robust. They're efficient. And efficiency is often the opposite of resilience. The supply chain that delivers affordable electronics, clothing, appliances, and medications from Chinese factories to American consumers is a marvel of optimization. It minimizes cost, reduces waste, maximizes speed. It's extraordinary. It's also fragile. When a single link in that chain breaks, the effects cascade through systems that have no backup mechanisms, because backup mechanisms are expensive and were eliminated in favor of efficiency. This isn't about criticizing trade policy or globalization. Both create enormous value. This is about understanding the architecture of the system you live inside. Remember the container ship stopping 40 miles offshore? In this simulation, the gap between everything is normal and hospitals rationing supplies was 14 days. Not instant, but fast enough that the systems designed to buffer against disruption couldn't fully absorb the shock. The scenario was hypothetical, but the dependencies are real. The inventory levels are real. The just-in-time manufacturing systems are real. The concentrated geographic sourcing is real. The only hypothetical part was the trigger. The real question this simulation raises isn't whether this exact scenario will happen. It's what other single points of failure exist in economic systems you interact with daily, and how quickly stability can shift to scarcity when one of those points breaks. We built the most efficient economy in human history. We got efficiency. We also got vulnerability. Whether that trade-off is acceptable depends on how you value cost versus resilience. There's no objectively correct answer. But after watching how this simulation unfolded, you probably have a more informed opinion than you did 12 minutes ago. The distance between normal and crisis might be shorter than a 90-day import pause. If this type of economic simulation interests you, the algorithm knows what to show you next. But here's the question worth sitting with. If this scenario started tomorrow, how many days would it take before you personally noticed something was different?